Polaris National Security was founded to make sure Americans across this country understand why we need leadership abroad to keep our nation safe. Our leaders are asleep at the wheel. We never imagined how quickly it would take our leaders to turn peace through strength into war through weakness. The economic sanctions that we put in place in the Trump administration have not been enforced. In just a few short years, we've lost Afghanistan to the Taliban.
Taliban taking Kabul.
We've seen war break out across Europe for the first time in decades.
The Russian invasion has begun.
We've seen hundreds of Israelis and Americans murdered by terrorists.
Israel tonight is at war.
While some in our nation cheered them on.
We have an administration that does not take China seriously.
We won't let this continue on without a fight. Traveling across this country, we have seen just how much our fellow Americans care about national security and care for a strong America. Polaris is fighting back for an America that leads again and wins again. We're taking our next generation of leaders to see the open border for themselves. We are ready to take on 2024 and to continue to spread our message across this nation.
Start pushing back and containing China.
China should be our number one focus.
Knowing what you're fighting for matters.
We will always stand up for America to make her that shining city on a hill. We have to take our country back.
This administration is simply not serious.
The fight is just getting started. Will you join us?
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage founder of Polaris National Security and host of the Morgan Ortagus radio show on SiriusXM, Morgan Ortagus.
Hey. Hello, Ohio. Well, thank you for spending your Saturday night with me. How are you? I'm Morgan Ortagus, former Trump spokesperson at the State Department. I went to a campaign stop earlier with Bernie. Yes, I was on Gutfeld last night, so ran from Fox News in New York City to be here with you guys. Thank you so much for coming. This is also, we're going to have a ton of people that are watching and viewing this online. So whether you're in person here in Ohio or whether you're online, welcome to Polaris National Security. I founded this organization at the end of the Trump administration. And essentially, I had a baby 2 days after the election. I moved to Tennessee. And I was, living my life. And all of a sudden, in August of 2021, Afghanistan fell to the Taliban. And I watched 13 of our bravest and best young men and women get killed by an ISIS suicide bomber. And I said, you know what? I may have been in the fight with the Trump administration. I can't sit on the sidelines for the next 4 years of the Biden-Harris administration. So we have been going around the country for 3 years talking about American national security and American foreign policy. And we're going to do this tonight with 3 of the best people in the business. So first, I want to welcome to the stage my dear friend, the former director of ICE, Tom Homan. Tom, I think you got more applause than I did. Well, of course, another dear friend of mine, just a rock star. I personally think maybe she should have been VP, but I'm glad she's here. Former Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi. Hi. Right here. And of course, somebody that I'm very, very excited to have tonight, right here from the great state of Ohio, Bernie Moreno. Thank you, friend. Okay, we're going to jump right into it, and we will have time for some audience Q&A as well. We just ask that you try to stick to the theme of American national security and foreign policy. Bernie, I'm going to start with you, and hopefully you and I can have a conversation about this. We obviously have 2 experts here on the border and on law enforcement and the judicial system, so we're going to get to that. But I first want to start in the Middle East. The reason why I want to start in the Middle East is because our president forgot on the debate stage that 3 young men and women were killed in Jordan, American service members. He forgot that American service members were killed. I might have to switch to a handheld. You guys, okay. He forgot that 3 service members were killed in Jordan. He forgot that 13 were killed in Afghanistan. He made the statement that American forces, I'm paraphrasing, are not at war in his administration. And I'm going to switch. There you go. That's okay. We can share. Is that better? Testing, testing, testing? Not yet?
There you go. Try mine. There you go.
Hello, hello. Okay. Can you hear me? Yep. There we go. We'll make this work. So he made the statement that American forces were not engaged in war anywhere in the world under his presidency. That's dangerously wrong. I just want to know, your thoughts about Biden and Harris's leadership, and especially on the world stage, but especially with what's happening to our troops right now and our diplomats in the Middle East.
Yeah, well, my wife Bridget's here. Bridget, round of applause. So we went to Israel beginning of July. We were there for about 5 days. Look, the reality is the world has never been so dangerous as it is today. And the reason for that is very simple. What keeps the world at peace, what keeps the world safe is American strength and American leadership. And what Joe Biden projects to the world is extraordinary weakness, hesitation. And President Trump did the opposite. In fact, you remember in the 2015 and 16 cycle, when he was running against Hillary Clinton, they said, you can't vote for President Trump. There'll be wars everywhere. First time in my lifetime that I remember there was no new wars. In fact, he ended wars. He prevented Russia from going into Ukraine. He kept Iran in check. He kept the Middle East at peace, did the Abraham Accords, and now, of course, Biden has gone the exact opposite. If you think it's bad now, I want you to picture in your brain what it would look like to have Kamala Harris sitting across the table from Vladimir Putin. Think about that for a second. So we need strong American leadership, and that's why I'm so proud to have President Trump's endorsement in my race and why we got to get him elected as the 47th President of the United States.
Pam, because I'm in national security and foreign policy, I don't like being right about things all the time. What do I mean by that? Normally, when I'm right about things, I'm predicting something really bad is going to happen, and then it ends up happening. Just about a day and a half ago, less than 2 days ago, I wrote an op-ed about how the Iranian regime is meddling in our presidential election. In the op-ed, I did not quote Morgan Ortagus or Republican sources. I quoted the Biden-Harris DNI, the Director of National Intelligence. They put out a report. They declassified information saying that Iran is trying to tip the scales of the election. They're meddling in our election. And by the way, did anybody see this in the news? Probably. Very few. The media wasn't covering it all. So I wrote an op-ed, tried to get the information. As we're coming here tonight, we learn from Politico that the Iranian regime has hacked the Trump campaign and is in their emails. Yeah. So again, one of those issues where I don't like being right. And by the way, the Iranians are actively trying to kill former President Trump, former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, my boss, and other cabinet officials. They're trying to kill people on U.S. soil. They're actively killing U.S. service members with their drones through their proxies in the Middle East. So you go through all of this. As somebody who's worked as a prosecutor and law enforcement, can you explain to us sort of the gravity of the situation that the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism, as certified by the Biden-Harris administration, is meddling in our election to the extent that they're now hacking into the emails? What does this mean from a judicial law enforcement perspective, and what should the Biden and Harris administration be doing about it?
Well, I'm sure they're doing. Is my mic working? Thank you. We'll share. I'm sure they're doing nothing. I'm sure they're doing nothing about it, because they're certainly not hacking into their election because they want them to win the election. Because peace through strength, what Bernie just said. And that's what they're so scared of. That's why Iran's out to get us. And it was a top level, somebody at the very top of the Trump campaign who they hacked into. And so can you imagine what else they're doing? And, I'm looking at this gentleman's wearing a shirt that says "Fight, Fight, Fight" with President Trump the day he was shot. And I spent a lot of time with him 3 days after he was shot. And he is the strongest, bravest human being I know. And, if he's out there fighting for us, we've got to be fighting for him. And I mean, I was sitting there with him. He's having to watch on TV over and over himself being shot. And that's what they're so scared of. They're scared of a man that gets up and says, fight, after they tried to take him out. Someone tried to take him out. But we also know the Iranians, they were after him. They're hacking into our campaign. They're going after our country. So we've got to do everything we can to stop them. The problem is, and Tom will tell you this, the Biden-Harris administration, they're not going to do anything to stop it. They're just not. Well, where is Joe Biden, first of all?
He's at the beach in Delaware. I saw that on the way here.
He is, yeah, he really is. And so they're certainly not going to do anything. But yeah, this is our country at stake. You know, we always say this is the election of our lifetime. It really is. Because I firmly believe we're not going to have a country if President Trump isn't back in office. And that's exactly what China wants. That's exactly what Iran wants. That's exactly what Russia wants. They don't want Donald Trump because he will keep us out of war.
Amen. Yes. Pam, you got the amen section going on, so that's good. That means you're about. You know, Tom, you've obviously been to the border many times over your career. I've been 3 times in the past year, I think. I was just there in like late October, November, my last trip was in the spring. I think, guys, we were there like in April, May. We'll all be going together again in September. One of the things that I mentioned to you backstairs is about 2:30 in the morning when we were in Yuma, we had the cartels had dropped off a bunch of the, illegals to come over the border. We asked everybody where they were from. The first 3 or 4 people were from China. The next 3 guys were from Syria. So we have Tom Homan, the FBI director, testifying multiple times before Congress this year, saying that there are flashing and blinking red lights, warning about a terrorist attack. We've got our men and women, diplomats and military being attacked in the Middle East. And we have, over at least 2 million gotaways, people that we don't even know, people on the terror watch list. How concerned are you about an attack on the homeland that emanates from somebody coming through our southern border?
You know, every speech I give throughout the country, I talk about the fentanyl that's killed 250,000 people. I talk about the sex trafficking of women and children, up 600% of this administration. I talk about, the criminal cartels and the criminals and gang members. There are 2 million unknown gotaways. 2 million people we know across the border. There's a video, drone traffic, central traffic. We got them on video. There's an image. But they weren't apprehended because Border Patrol was too busy changing diapers, making baby formula, and so forth. But I always say my biggest concern is that Joe Biden created the biggest national security vulnerability I've seen in this nation in my lifetime. And I'll tell you this, I'm the old guy up here, right? I started in Border Patrol in 1984. I've worked for 6 presidents, starting with Ronald Reagan. I had the honor of working with the greatest president of my lifetime, Donald Trump. Every president I worked for took steps to secure the border because they understood you can't have national security if you don't have border security. You didn't know what's coming in, who's coming in, why it's coming in, where's coming in. No one had more success than President Trump. Illegal immigration down 45-year low. Illegal immigration down 83 to 90%. Joe Biden's the first president in the history of this nation who came into office and unsecured a border on purpose. So the national security issue is huge. It scares the shit out of me. I'm telling you straight up. Every day I wake up concerned because the Border Patrol has arrested people from 181 different countries. Some of these countries are sponsored for terror. They've arrested 387 people on the terrorist watch list coming across the southwest border, twice as many of that on the northern border. We got over 2 million known gotaways. How many of them came from a country sponsoring terror? They just arrested 8. Luckily, the intelligence community, who's not perfect, got these 8 doing some chatter, planning a Russian-type assault in the United States. Luckily, we got them. But the intelligence community, they missed 9/11. They missed Afghanistan. They're not perfect. So how about the next one? Are they going to get it? But I'm telling you this right now. You got to ask yourself this question. That's what I ask people. They say, Holman, how do you know how many terrorists coming across the border? It's common sense. Why did 2 million people pay more to get away? Why didn't they pay less? Because you pay the cartels 2 amounts. You pay them 1 amount just to get to the border. Now the cartel's job done. You turn yourself in a uniform. You get released within 24 hours. You get a free airline ticket to the city of your choice. You get a free hotel room. You get 3 squares a day. You get free medical care. And in 90 days, you get work authorization. Who the hell pays more not to take advantage of that giveaway program? Over 2 million people chose that route not to get vetted, not to get fingerprinted, not to turn themselves in. These are your gang members. These are the ones carrying fentanyl, and these are going to be the people that come here to blow something up. I can't tell you how many terrorists have crossed this border in Joe Biden, but someday we're going to find out it's going to be a bad day for America.
Tom, thank you. Just a quick follow-up on that. I read, and it was just the headline, that there was a potential ISIS smuggling ring actually operating in the border. Can you clue us in on what's happening there?
The criminal cartel, here's what you need to know. The strongest nation on earth, the United States of America, no longer has operational control of our southern border. We don't control what's coming in, who's coming in. We don't. And you can ask any chief patrol agent who speaks pretty freely now because they're so pissed off they can't see straight. They'll tell you they've lost complete control of the southern border. They can't contain what's coming across. There has been hundreds of people moved in through an ISIS smuggling network. Think about it. ISIS are smuggling people in this country, and there's evidence. Right now, there's over 400 people that the intelligence community and federal law enforcement are looking at that's already in this country. 400. That's what we know about. I'm telling you, folks, if I don't care what your opinion is on illegal immigration. I don't. I mean, I'm an immigration guy. I don't care what your opinion is on illegal immigration. You can think, victimless crime, coming here for a better life, okay, whatever. But when you cause a crisis this big that overwhelms the Border Patrol, where 70% of agents are no longer on patrol, changing diapers and making baby formula, making hospital runs. 30% of agents are left on the line. So the cartels who control our southern border, they'll push a group of 200 family units through one area, knowing that 30% is going to seize that opportunity because it's a humanitarian issue and they're going to save some lives so these people are in bad shape. That's cartels create gaps, operational gaps. That's when they're going to move people from terrorist countries in this country. We got a lot of enemies in this country. This administration isn't scaring anybody. That's why I support the president I worked for last, Donald Trump, and I'm speaking of Tom Homan, not as player, I'm speaking of Tom Homan. It's going to take a president like that to take ISIS out. Yes. We need a strong leadership who's going to shut this stuff down. Yeah. I'm telling you, just like I said, the RNC, I stood on stage at the RNC, I took a lot of hate for it, and I said, two things happen. Number one, for those entering illegally and released, millions being released by the Biden administration illegally, because the statute's clear they should be detained, but they released them illegally. They better start packing now. Because if Trump comes back, I'm coming back, and I will run the biggest deportation operation ever saw.
There you go.
Morgan, can I add something?
Go for it, Pam. I want to say, by the way, Pam's going to follow up, but you just said to take ISIS out. We already had to do that once. Yes. In the Barack Obama administration, I know I don't look it, but I've been in the intelligence community for 20 years, and ISIS had a physical caliphate in Iraq and Syria. Trump had to come in 2017 and destroy that physical caliphate. In 4 years, Biden-Harris policies have brought ISIS back. ISIS Khorasan has a foothold in every province in Afghanistan. ISIS is operating in Africa. They're operating in Europe. You can't even go to a freaking Taylor Swift concert in Europe anymore. Yeah. Okay, Pam. Yeah.
No, and I rarely share personal conversations with the president, but remember when our borders were secure, that all of these people were getting yelled at saying, oh, you're separating mothers from babies, and all these good people want to walk across our border. Well, we now know that's not true, and remember when the border was wide open, right when Biden opened the border, Biden-Harris, they opened the border, and people were remember we were watching the news, Fox, and they were just flowing across the border. Remember that when that was happening? So it's a Saturday morning, and President Trump calls me, and I share this story now, and he says, Pam, can you believe what's happening? And this is where the man's head is, because he knew what I did when I was Attorney General. He said, can you imagine all the children being smuggled in our country and all the drugs that are about to flow across our country? And wasn't he right?
I want to follow up on that, Bernie, because both Tom and Pam touched on fentanyl and the drugs coming into our country. And you and I know, you have an international background as well, you and I know that the cartels just don't come up with this stuff, right? We know that the Chinese Communist Party has the precursors that make fentanyl. Those chemicals emanate from China. What did we learn recently? There's something in the House that House Republicans started. It's actually Will right here. Raise your hand, Will. Will works on it. It's the technical name is the House China Select Committee. It's the committee in the House that's investigating the Chinese Communist Party and what they're doing in the United States. Will used to work for us at Polaris. He's over there now at the House committee. So this committee did a big, long study on fentanyl, what's happening. They found that not only did the Chinese government, the Chinese Communist Party, know who was selling these chemical precursors to fentanyl in China, they encouraged it, they aided it. Not only did these people do it with their blessing, it was encouraged by the Chinese government for people within China to send these chemical precursors. The Chinese Communist Party knows that they are poisoning and killing Americans, the #1 killer of our young people, with these drugs. And this administration for years said nothing about it until all of us on the stage screamed our head off on television. You know, you might be in a different position a year from now, let's just say that. If you are, what should we be doing to hold the Chinese Communist Party accountable for the ultimate deaths of American young people from fentanyl?
Well, the reality is they've got no punishment at all. In fact, counter punishment. They've been rewarded. I mean, we're sitting here in Toledo. I was just in Dayton earlier. You go to places like Youngstown and Lorain near my home. What's happened in all those cities? All of our manufacturing has been gutted out of those cities. And where'd it go? It went to Mexico and China. We rebuilt the middle class in those countries off the backs of cities here in Ohio. They have not only not gotten punished, Morgan, they've gotten rewarded. By the way, do you think it's a surprise that it's 10% for the big guy? Right? So, and that's Joe Biden. And let me just be clear, because this is a bipartisan panel. This is a bipartisan issue also. We've had elected leaders of both parties that have sold out this country. They've become sickeningly wealthy while America has suffered. They have allowed this to go on for decades, and it took a real estate developer from New York City to come down to Golden Escalator to call it out. And you go back and listen to that speech in 2015, he was right about everything. And that's why they fear him. That's why they hate him. That's why they tried to kill him about a month ago, because it ends their party. Listen, at the end of the day, we are struggling financially at the grocery store, at the gas station. We're seeing our country be absolutely ravaged by illegal immigration. I was just in Springfield. We could talk about that in a minute. What is the elites that actually run this country? It's not Joe Biden. Joe Biden's not running anything. He's napping and, he's a useful idiot. By the way, you know who's a bigger useful idiot? Kamala Harris. They're not. She's not somebody who's going to be an executive or somebody in charge of this country. It's the billionaire class, the elites that fly around in their private jets, go watch the Olympic ceremony, that absolutely disgusting show of anti-Christianity, and they talk about in Davos how all us have to reduce our red meat consumption. Tom, are you going to reduce your red meat consumption? Tom's not serving tofu at the next cookout for his family, I promise you that.
Tom has not skipped the steaks.
But you see that. So the issue, Morgan, is what are we going to do if we get elected? When we get elected, we put Trump back in the White House. We keep the House of Representatives and win the Senate, which runs through Ohio. We're actually going to do something novel in this country that should have been done a long time ago by Republicans. We're going to do the things that we campaign on and actually solve these problems. That's what we're going to do.
And that's why we need leaders like Bernie.
Now I think you all can see why I endorsed this man months ago. He's the right guy at the right time for the right job. Yes. We need him.
I want to get Pam and Tom in both quickly on the fentanyl issue, and you could talk about it from a border perspective, but Pam, is there anything that you want to bring up from the law enforcement prosecutorial perspective?
Yeah, and really, Morgan, more personal, as a former AG, anytime we talk about fentanyl, you've got to warn, we've got to say this public service announcement every time we say the word fentanyl. you've got to warn your kids, your grandkids, your friends, your neighbors that do not, and this is not extreme, tell them not to take a Tylenol from someone they don't know, because anything can be laced with fentanyl. We were seeing it in Florida, and it was the drug of choice among college kids, Xanax and Adderall, and they were buying it on the street thinking nothing could happen, and kids were dropping dead. They still are, now more than ever, because of the fentanyl flowing in our country by the Chinese, manufactured in China, walking through this country from Mexico, just walking straight into our country. And we've got to tell everyone, do not take anything from someone you don't know. Anything. And the vape pens, all of that, you've got to be so careful because it can be laced with fentanyl.
Yeah. I mean, who here has somebody that they know in their family or friends that have been infected by fentanyl? I have. Yeah. So many people in the room. Same thing. It happens to all of us. Tom, I think it was just in Arizona that I read, and I feel like this headline comes up every few months, where you read that there's some bust of fentanyl at the border or at one of our ports of entry with enough fentanyl to kill the whole country. And that's not even hyperbole. So where are we on actually going after fentanyl? Because President Biden claims that they have caught more fentanyl than any recent president. I wanted to explain to them that's called a self-own, my friends. So where are we with this administration? With, by the way, Kamala Harris. She's the border czar, the current vice president. What is she or any of them doing to actually stop fentanyl from coming in?
They ain't doing anything. Law enforcement is, and law enforcement has made record seizures, but that tells you records coming across. Look, we got 250,000 people dead. The criminal cartels of Mexico who are producing this poison have killed more Americans than every terrorist organization in the world combined. That's why we need a president to hold China accountable. That's why we need a president to hold Mexico accountable. Not a damn thing's been done in China, not a damn thing's done in Mexico. Mexico's not going to fix the problem of the cartels because much of Mexico is on the take. I've worked in Mexico for 3 decades. Not all law enforcement's on the take, not all government officials are, but many are. They're not going to stop it. It's going to take a strong president to take out the criminal cartels in Mexico. It's going to take our special operations and our intelligence community to take them out. And I said it at the RNC stage. This has to happen. Because, I'll say it again, more people have died from fentanyl poison than every terrorist attack in the world combined. Think about that. And something you need to understand, they say, well, it doesn't really affect me. First of all, fentanyl is making every town, city, and state. But a vast majority of these kids that are dying, they're not drug addicts.
No.
I've met so many moms and dads. It breaks. I'm a tough guy, but I love kids. And I met hundreds of moms and dads who buried their children because their child thought they're taking no. And one mother, I'm going to tell you this real quick story. I'm going to tell you how devastating. Just before I spoke on stage, a mother came up to me at the RNC. She goes, and she was crying, heartbroken, made me cry. She says, my son was studying for the finals, and me and his dad were all over him saying, you got to get your grades up. We're not going to pay you next year's tuition. So he took a pill to stay up that night and study. It was laced with fentanyl, and he died. This mother will never be the same because she takes part responsibility, and it's not her responsibility. He took a pill to stay up at night. Whether it's a no dose, whatever. Most of the fentanyl killing Americans, we have no idea these drugs are being laced. This is a poisoning. This is an attempt by China to destroy this country, and they're doing it. So we need a strong president that's going to shut this down.
Can I? So some of you may know I was born in Colombia, South America. That's where my family's from. Colombia was the drug cartel capital of the world from 70s, 80s, into the 90s. What we have to do in Mexico is what we did with Colombia. Mexico, you may not know this, or actually this group definitely knows this, you're more informed than most people, is our largest legal trading partner. We do more trade with Mexico than any other country on earth. Now, they're also our largest illegal trading partner. Sex trafficking, human trafficking, the fentanyl we just talked about. What it takes for us to fix this problem is a commander-in-chief like President Trump that's going to go to Mexico. So you have a choice. You can continue to be our partner, or you're going to be our enemy. Now, if you're our enemy, every single product that comes from your country, the United States, will either be prohibited or tariffed 200, 300, 400, 1,000%, whatever it takes. They have to make that decision. I believe Mexico wants to make the right decision. I think the people who live in Mexico don't like the drug cartels very much. When I went to the border, Tom will tell me this is nuts, but I went to the border in Del Rio. I was there with my wife, Bridget, and we didn't have much of a plan, to be honest with you. It wasn't like your trips. And I said to the guy at the airport, I said, where are you from? He said, I live in Mexico. I said, let's jump in a rental car, and I drove into Mexico with him. So just imagine, a guy I met at the airport for the first time, Tom.
And you took Bridget?
Bridget, who was yelling at me, what are we doing? And we drive into Piedras Negras, city on the other side of the border in Mexico. And I got out of the car, smart idea, right, Tom? And started walking down the street, talking to the citizens, the people who live there, Mexicans. You know who they loved? Donald J. Trump. Donald J. Trump. Because when he was president, he had forced Mexico to put troops on the border that had kept the drug cartels away from their towns and cities.
Yeah.
And they want to be freed. Now, when, not if, President Trump's in the White House and Mexico's given this choice, I think Mexico will make the right decision and then hear it clearly. Any organization that has murdered 250,000 Americans will be annihilated, which is what we have to do to the Mexican drug cartels. Not put them in jail, annihilate them and wipe them off the face of the map, and that's what we're going to do.
I know our audience has questions. I'm going to ask one more, and then we will have a couple of roving microphones, and we'll try to get to as many questions as we can. But I want to ask a question to all of you. All three of you can give an answer. And I should have done this at the beginning, but if you are either current, active, or retired military, law enforcement, first responder, will you please stand? Let's give them a round of applause.
Thank you.
And if any of you are Navy, especially, go Navy. I'm Navy, so. Bernie, I'll start with you, but I'll ask all of you. We have a historic recruitment and retention crisis in this country as it relates to our military. I'm sure Tom and Pam can tell us how it also relates to cops, Border Patrol agents, first responders around this country. But there's a sense of people very much being disillusioned, not wanting to stay in. Maybe some of it started with the COVID vaccine, or maybe it started when they decided to purge everybody who may have had a MAGA sticker on their Facebook or something that was in the military. But whatever the cause may be, the recruitment crisis is here and in most branches, except for the Marine Corps. Do we have any Marines? Okay, of course. Hoorah! I love the commandant. He said everybody else is throwing all these monies and financial incentives for people to enlist. And the Marine Corps said, we're not doing any of that. You get the privilege of being a Marine. They met their recruitment goals. So we'll leave the Marine Corps out of it. Other than the Marine Corps, everyone else, but not just the military, law enforcement, first responders, Border Patrol, everybody is experiencing this crisis. How do we turn it around? How do we get young people to want to serve their country again?
Well, we got to get rid of the nonsense. I mean, the reality is I'm next to this great American, Tom Homan. We have the current presidential nominee for the Democrat Party that called his organization equivalent to the KKK. Think about that for just a second. Right to his face, called him that in a Senate hearing. That's a disgrace. So why would you, if you're an 18 or 19 or 20-year-old kid, say, I'm going to go sign up for an organization which the leaders of my country disparage me? If you're a police officer in Cincinnati or Cleveland, you're going to go sign up to be a police officer when the mayor of that city marched with the BLM protesters as the city burnt down? If you're a police officer in Minneapolis and the vice presidential nominee was governor and allowed a police station to be burnt to the ground, why would you go be a police officer? Right? That's insane. So we got to get rid, Morgan, of all of that nonsense and make it clear that we honor, we thank, and we respect law and order in this country every single day. And then in the military, listen, we have a great military. Don't let anybody ever say we don't have a great military. We have an amazing military. Our military are heroes. They put on that uniform because they're called by God to do it. But we have a civilian leadership that is completely out of their mind. All this woke nonsense has permeated the military. We need to have a lethal fighting force. We don't need to be teaching transgenderism or DEI or wokeness or privilege. We need to be teaching them how to be lethal and how to take out our enemies. We fix that by getting rid of those civilians.
Pam, go ahead.
Yeah, and in Florida, I'm gonna speak to state law enforcement, and Bernie said it so well though. But in Florida, we don't have those issues because we support the blue. We back the blue in Florida. I was in Minneapolis 2 days ago with Laura Trump, my friend, and Mike Watley. And we were there doing a Protect the Vote tour, protectthevote.com, for election integrity. But we were talking to all the state lawmakers and their governor. We always say you've got to vote these mayors, all these bad people out of office. Well, now this guy, their governor, wants to be vice president of the United States of America. And he's the one that as Bernie said, he let Minnesota burn down. He didn't call in the National Guard until he had to, and then he didn't keep them long enough, nor call in enough. He did not back his police officers. His wife sat in the governor's office, in the governor's mansion, looked out the window and said she loved to smell the burning tires. This is crazy. This is the guy that wants to be your vice president? So he wants to take what he did in Minnesota nationally. And we cannot let that happen. So we have got to back the men and women in law enforcement. And every time you see a police officer, I don't care if they're writing you a ticket, you thank them for what they do. You thank TSA when you're going through security. And now they come up to me and go, "We love Trump." They're not scared anymore. It's a whole different world now. They used to whisper it, now not so much. But you've got to thank law enforcement. You've got to thank our military, of course. So thank you all for serving and supporting all of our great men and women in blue.
Yes. Tom.
Well, I told you I'm an old guy. I started on board in 1984, but before that I was a police officer in New York, just like my daddy and just like my granddad. I always knew I was going to be a cop. So I take his question personally because I watched Kamala Harris compare us to the KKK. I had Congressman Washington Schultz call me a bigot during a testimony. I had another congressman say I didn't care about dying kids because I worked for the Trump administration. The men and women of ICE, we have politicians who want them abolished. We got Kamala Harris standing on the stage and calling the horse patrol racist, saying they whip black people, and they didn't whip anybody. They did exactly as they were trained to do. The only ones that did anything wrong that day were the Haitian migrants who entered the country illegally, which is a crime, and ignored federal commands, which is a felony. But they attacked the men in the horse patrol, and I can tell you for a fact their wives and their children were bullied in churches and schools, and they're still not back to full duty. Well, Kamala Harris supports sanctuary cities. She's attacked the men and women wearing the uniform, the green uniform, but I was proud to wear. And as the guy who handed folded flags to many wives and children of downed Border Patrol agents and ICE agents, those statements alone disqualify her from ever being the commander-in-chief. That's my opinion. Because the men and women who wear that badge and gun is the finest 1% this country has. Those men in the Border Patrol, 20,000 men and women in the Border Patrol, they go to work every day. Their morale is zero. They take sicknesses home to their families, whether it's TB, measles, chickenpox, or whatever. They bring toys from their children to the facility so to the immigrant children have something to play with. When the last time I was down the border, the only humanity on the border right now is the men and women wearing green.
That's right.
I watched a guy bigger than me. He must have been 270 pounds, big man. There was a little girl, probably 7 years old, all by herself in this group this group. That little girl was, and I saw this. She was terrified. She was shaking. She was crying. She knew nobody. That breaks your heart. But this big, burly Border Patrol agent got on his knees, talked to her in Spanish. And I still get emotional because that little girl wrapped her arms around that big man, and he didn't let her go the rest of the night. That's the men and women wearing green.
Amen.
They're not racist. They're not white nationalists. They're not any of that stuff. They're brave men and women. So I take this personal because I wore that uniform, and I'm disgusted what the left has done to the men and women in law enforcement.
Amen. Okay. I don't want to hog up all the question time, so James has got a microphone. Who has a question for anybody on the stage? I saw this lady's hand first. We'll bring a mic to you. Hold on. Okay, there you go.
I noticed that the son of the president recently was charged or indicted by the Justice Department, which I was like questioning, is this even true? For, I don't know what they called it, but for, are you aware of that? And I'm wondering, is this a change in the tide, so to speak, because he's been so protected? I mean, maybe I'm hoping for something that is not real, but is this a change that now Biden's out and Hunter is fair game, or is this just throwing us a, cookie to keep us happy?
No, absolutely not. There's no change. And remember, they had given Hunter a sweetheart plea deal, and a savvy judge caught it. Thank goodness. Which would have given him immunity from everything. Right. But it would have given him immunity from everything. So now they're trying to cover their tracks. And frankly, on a drug charge, nothing happens anyway. I mean, look at the gun charges. But no, it's not a changed administration at all. They had to charge him, but nothing's going to happen on that. Nothing.
Okay. Right here in the front, black and white blazer, sorry. Very cute outfit, by the way.
Thank you. Oh, you're gonna hold it for me?
Yeah.
You're a gentleman.
I have a well-trained staff.
So we're talking about security and stuff. As Americans, we've always been able to protect ourselves, so we've had that right to bear arms, which now Camilla's saying, okay, that's going to go. That's going to go. So how are we as citizens, concerned and seeing all this happening, are we going to allow them to come in and take our weapons so that if someone, say one of these criminals that we know are here, breaks into our home, comes into our neighborhoods, and tries to hurt our neighbors, our family, are we going to be able to, stop that and say, okay, I have my gun, I am able to use it. If someone comes after me, are we going to be able to keep that right, or is she going to take it away from us?
Well, Bernie might have some thoughts on that.
Absolutely never. There's not a chance that will ever happen. Look, what's amazing is there was something in the water in 1776, to quote Vivek Ramaswamy. I mean, our founders were young people. I mean, Alexander Hamilton was 18, James Madison was, I believe, 23, Thomas Jefferson was 33. And when I became a citizen, which I did at the first opportunity I could, which was when I was 18, my mom convinced me that this test was really hard. So she made me read the Federalist Papers. Now, it's hard to read the Federalist Papers today, let alone as a teenager. But one part of the Federalist 44 that I'll never forget reading was it says, an armed citizenry is the best defense against an ambitious government. So find your local gun store, stock up on ammo, stock up on guns. I carry one in the front seat, one in the back seat, and one I won't tell you where. So, look, the reality is the same government that wants to confiscate our weapons, and by the way, they're open about it. This isn't 1992 Clinton versus Bush. This is lunatic versus normal. This is a situation where they've openly called for gun confiscation, openly. And the reality is, of course, that's their fantasy. Because the last country that confiscated guns is called Venezuela. And if you think America can't go down that same path, trust me, as somebody who watched it happen to the country next door to where I was born, it can happen here in America. And it starts with the minute we even open a crack to letting them take our guns.
Let me add to that real quick, because when you asked that question, I went right to a different angle. By the fact you're in this room tonight tells me you're a patriot, because you're taking a Saturday night when you could be out with your loved one having dinner. But what are you going to do tomorrow? What are you going to do? I mean, because if we don't make the right decision in November, we're done. I already got 10 years. I told President Trump I'd come back, but I got 10 years worth of work to do right now on the damage they've done in 3 years. If we don't get the right guy in the White House, we don't get the right people in the Senate, we lose. And forever. So what are you going to do tomorrow? Raise some hell. Get your friends out. Get your family out. Everybody you know, take them, hop in the back of the pickup truck and get them to vote. Vote early. Vote by mail-in. Vote any way you can. But we got to vote. I'm telling you. That scares me too. I got a lot of guns. They're never going to get my guns. But you know what? No way we prevent it. We put the right people in office who's going to protect your Second Amendment rights. So what are you going to do tomorrow? It's grateful you're here, but you got to do the next move. You got to get involved. You got to raise some hell. You got to get involved in the campaign. You got to get every friend and family to vote. We got a choice here. Either we lose the country, and I don't say this half-heartedly. Either we fix it in November, or we're never going to fix it.
Yeah.
That's right.
And Tom, from my angle, you focus on the border and the domestic side. We know, Bernie, from the international side, Xi Jinping's just waiting. Why is China being somewhat quiet right now? They're just waiting, right? This is what Kim Jong-un is doing. This is like, and by the way, plenty of the dictators and despots are not being quiet. I mean, look at Iran. They're threatening within the next 24 hours to go after Israel. They continue to go after us. But there's some even bigger fish out there. They're just waiting.
Well, Morgan, you know the world better than anybody else I know, honestly. I mean, every corner of the globe, she knows it. She knows what's up. Here's what I'd ask you. Can I ask you a question?
Oh, sure.
What foreign military on earth, together or on its own, a group of nations could get together and destroy this country the way the radical left is destroying this country? Is there a military on earth that could damage this country the way that those lunatics are destroying this nation?
Yeah, I mean, listen, that's incredibly important because everywhere else in the world, it's not like it's a choice in China to enter the PLA, right? And if you take a generation of young people and if you tell them that this is a racist nation founded on white supremacy, why would you want to grow up and fight and die for that nation? Well, because that's just not true. That's not who we are. That's not what it is. But I can tell you when I look around the world, I've never been more scared, not even since 9/11. At 9/11, I felt like we had good leadership in place. We were attacked. We were going to respond. I have no clue how the vice president would respond if she's in a different position in January. You have your hand up a few times, I saw. So can we get a microphone down? I am watching. I'm going to try to get it to as many of these as I can. And I'll bore you guys and talk about nuclear weapons or something. Okay, there we go. Let's go.
Okay, this question is for Tom and for
Pam.
If we don't know where 20 million illegals are, when Trump gets back in, and I say when, and you take over, how do you round everybody up? Do you put them on buses? Do you take them back? Because I just have this envision that the left's going to bring up every legal reason why they can't do it. Warfare or lawfare, I guess, is a new term. All that's going, and I just envision them being back here before the bus turns around and gets back here.
Yep. How do we do mass deportation is the question.
Well, let me put it this way. It's not what the left says. We're not going to build concentration camps. We're not going to sweep neighborhoods. We're not going to be the Gestapo. First of all, during the first Trump administration, 91% of everybody ICE arrested under my command was a convicted criminal. 9 out of 10. President Trump, in my discussion with him just a few days ago, it's the same thing. National security threats from criminals have to be first. But people say, how can you remove 20 million people one at a time? No one's off the table. But here's the problem. And I'm pissed off at Republicans on the Hill, too. I'm not favoring them either. Because when President Trump had the White House, first 2 years, he had the Senate, he had House, and he had the never-Trumpers didn't give him the support he needs. So that's why it's important to get a Senate that's going to support Trump, because when Trump's back in office, we need the Hill to do what they didn't do the first 2 years. How many beds are you going to give ICE to put people in? Because you got to put them in bed for a few days before you get travel documents. How many buses are we going to have? How many planes are we going to have? You're going to let us bring retired Border Patrol, retired ICE agents back. It's all going to depend on the purse strings being controlled by Congress. So I always tell people, we're going to remove as many people can depending on the assets that we get from the Hill, right? Which is, again, another important reason. We need Congress. We need the Senate. We need the House to be successful. But you got my word, it will be the largest deportation operation you've ever seen. And everybody says, what a racist thing to say. No, it's not. On the heels of historic illegal migration, where 3 million on average a year are coming in. Historic numbers, right? We're at 11 million right now. We're right now, if you go to EOR, immigration court, look at the data for immigration courts in the last 10 years, 9 out of 10 people that claim asylum at the border will get an order removal. 'Cause they don't qualify for asylum. They're committing asylum fraud. They're not escaping fear and persecution from their home government. They're coming for a better life, and I get that, but it's not asylum. So 9 out of 10 of these 10 million people are going to get an order removal. They have to be removed. If not, what the hell are we doing? Shut down the immigration court, take the border patrol off the border because there's no consequence. So there has to be an historic deportation operation because the law requires it. Unless we have a consequence to illegal behavior, it's not going to stop. That's how we fix the border.
That's right. And to add to that, on a local level, you know, some of these liberal, Minnesota, they're giving them driver's license. They're mailing driver's licenses to illegal aliens, and that's what they are. They're criminals. And Venezuela's getting safer because they've emptied their prisons, and they're sending them right across the border. So Tom and his agents are going to get them. And it's going to also depend on local law enforcement to be vigilant and catch them and work. And that's what's not happening now. There's no coordination with local law enforcement, with DEA, with Homeland Security. Got to be a team and all work together. And that's what's going to happen under a Trump administration.
And as far as those driver's licenses, there'll be a little pocket in the deportation file. We put that thing. We send them south. We send them back with a license, chopped in two.
I love this crowd. You guys are amazing. Believe it or not, we've already been going an hour. There's a gentleman in the back that's had his hands up a few times. This is going to be the last question. However, we are all going to stick around. We will take pictures. We can answer more questions. But I do want to be respectful of everybody's time. So you guys are an amazing crowd. I thank you so much. I just really appreciate it. For this gentleman in the back, go ahead, sir.
Thank you. So one of the things that's missing in the immigration argument is state sovereignty, the right to defend itself. And Texas took the forefront on this by passing Senate Bill 4, allowing states to directly deport individuals. Do you think more states, like Ohio, since the federal government is flying illegals directly into our states, do you think that individual states should take Texas's lead and put in statutes that allow states to deport individuals directly?
Tom, you want to take that?
Yeah, I think Pam can weigh in on Florida, but I tell you, SB 4 is under lawsuit now. And I'm just telling, look, I think Governor Abbott should be Secretary of Homeland Security right now, right? Because he's done more to secure the border than this administration has. But here's what I think is going to happen with SB 4, because it's in litigation. I think they'll win the right to arrest these people who enter the country illegally for trespass, because the only people they're going to arrest is people that actually witness coming across the border. That's a solid state charge. The deportation part of it, I think they'll lose, because Arizona has something similar, and they lost it, which is going to require the federal government to step up. But I'm not saying, I hope they win it. I'm just telling you based on my 3 decades. But yes, every state should follow that lead, because the federal government has advocated their responsibility to defend this nation, defend the states. So the states have to step up and do the right thing. Governor Abbott did the right thing. I hope he wins the SB 4. I think he's going to win half of it. I hope he wins all of it. And every state should follow suit. But you think Gavin Newsom's going to do it? Do you think,
Whitmer.
What's her name in Arizona? Another useless politician. It takes strong leadership. That's when the people have to raise up and raise hell. They're accountable to us. Same thing I told Congressman Jay Paul, and I testified, she was slamming the gavel, telling me to shut up. You know what? I'm not shutting up. I've earned the right to speak, and you work for me.
Yes.
And you're accountable to me. So every state should follow suit, absolutely.
Pam, anything?
Good legal analysis, Tom Homan. I'll take his legal analysis.
Florida's been kicking ass on the immigration issue.
Oh, and that's what I was going to say. You think these illegal aliens are coming to Florida? No, because we've got great leadership. So once again, we've got to elect great leadership too, because we can't rely on the federal lawmakers to protect us.
Yeah. Bernie, I want to give you a chance to close. You know, it's, as somebody who's worked on foreign policy my whole career, it's rarely a foreign policy election. The election's only about what's happening on the world stage when it's really bad. So I just want you to sort of summarize for us, and you can pick any part of the world or you could go around the whole world, but as you look at the state of American national security and American foreign policy, where are we right now and what can we do to fix it?
Well, I'm 57 years old, and I can tell you this. I've never felt more scared for this country than I do today, ever. And it's not even a close second, like when I can think of. And I lived in Boston when those planes left Logan Airport and crashed into the towers in New York City. And I didn't feel nearly as scared about where we are in this country as I do today. So that's the bad news. Now I'm going to give you a little bit more bad news. It's going to get worse. It's going to get worse before it gets better. It's going to get worse because if you're the enemy of America and you watch this senile old man sleeping on a beach in Rehoboth, Delaware, you're thinking to yourself, man, I got an opportunity. If you're the Ayatollah and you're thinking, there's a chance President Trump gets back in the White House, I got 4 months to do something really awful. I can tell you the people of Israel feel that every day viscerally, that they're nervous. They feel an existential threat to their existence, not just to their safety. If you're China, you're looking at this going, if Trump comes back, Taiwan is a dream for us, whereas it could be a reality. So for the next 4 months, for the next 87 days until our election, I think this country gets dramatically more dangerous. I also think, quite honestly, if you're a terrorist anywhere on the earth and you have not brought your people into America during the last 3.5 years, Pam Bondi's going to sue you for malpractice. Because this was an opportunity that we would never have given anybody. So that threat exists and it's real. That's why, believe me, the AR is ready and loaded at my house, not because of the government yet, but because I don't know where the next terror strike's going to happen. I actually predict it's not going to be in a major American city. I think you go to, I was at the Jason Aldean concert last night in Westchester, 30,000 people, very soft target. That city's not prepared for a terror attack the way New York City is. So we have to just pray, be extraordinarily vigilant for the next 87 days. That's the end of the bad news. Here's the good news. America has been through worse, historically. Not in my lifetime, but historically. We fought a revolution. We fought a civil war. We freed the world from fascism. But it doesn't happen because we sit on our butts and do nothing. And I'm going to reiterate what Tom Homan said earlier. You came here, thank you. You are already showing leadership. You already show how much you love this country. It cannot end tonight. You have 87 days to do whatever it takes, because if you wake up on November 6th and we lost this election, it's on us. We get the government we deserve. President Trump was nearly assassinated about a month ago. And the first words out of his mouth was what?
Fight, fight, fight.
Are we doing that? Like, are we legitimately doing that every day? Are we posting on social media? Are we having conversations with our friends? Are we getting people registered to vote? Are we encouraging absentee ballots? Are we going out there and knocking on doors and making phone calls? Because nobody else is going to save us. We have to do it. Now, I'll tell you that in my heart of hearts, I believe the best years of this country are ahead of us. I think we win this election. I think in 2 short years, we'll have Tom back to Ohio. We'll have Pam back to Ohio. I have Morgan back to Ohio. You know what we're going to talk about on July 4th of 2026, the 250th anniversary of the greatest country in the history of the world. We're going to talk about that we got this country back. And we got it because we worked our tails off to make sure that that happens. So please, whatever you're doing for the next 87 days, prioritize saving this country. There is no greater cause. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to leave everything on the field. I count on you guys to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for coming. God bless Ohio. God bless America. Thank you.